Hi, everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and I am back again, having just today finished up Christopher L. Bennett's A Choice of Futures. There, as you can see. Uh, the book has been on a wild ride, as you can see. It's taken a trip with me, but it has been a fun ride for sure. Started this on the 27th of October and just finished it today, so took me a bit of time to read, but I will admit that my time has been divided by family, work, kids, Baldur's Gate 3, and just finding not enough time to really get into this book and give it a full, just give it a real chance. I did that today, though. I spent some time today to really kind of round it out and really was getting into it at the end. And I tell you, it is a very kind of different book. It's telling a lot of stories, kind of almost like three almost separate, but kind of stories that are they're related to each other. But I can put that down for a moment. But I guess what I liked about it most was just the kind of this look into the beginnings of the Federation, and also just getting to see the Enterprise crew and where they went and where they ended up. After everything happened on the show. So let's look at the book here. Of course, you have a very serious Jonathan Archer there on the cover, and then let's read about it from the back here. A new nation has arisen from the ashes of the Romulan War. The United Federation of Planets, an unprecedented union of diverse species cooperating for the good of all. Admiral Jonathan Archer, the former captain of the Earth starship Enterprise, whose efforts made this union possible, envisions a vibrant federation promoting galactic peace and a multi-species starfleet dedicated to exploring strange new worlds. Archer's former crewmates, including Captain T'Pol of the USS Endeavour and Captain Malcolm Reed of the USS Pioneer, work with him to secure that bright future. Yet others within the Federation see its purpose as chiefly military, a united defense against a dangerous galaxy, while some of the neighbors view that military might with suspicion and fear, and getting the member nations, their space fleets, and even their technologies to work together as a unified whole is an ongoing challenge. This is a mouthful, my goodness, and we're not even done. Excuse me. When a new threat emerges from a force so alien and hostile that negotiation seems impossible, a group of unaligned worlds ask Starfleet to come to its defense, and the Federation's leaders seize the opportunity to build their reputation as an interstellar power. But Archer fears the conflict is building towards an unnecessary war, potentially taking the young nation down a path it was never meant to follow. Archer and his allies strive to find a better solution, but old foes are working secretly to sabotage their efforts and to ensure that the great experiment called the Federation comes to a quick and bloody end. Whoa, man, that's a lot going on. The good thing about all that is it is a very wordy back cover, but it doesn't really spoil too much of the story, except that they do make Malcolm captain, which happens during the story. He's originally aboard the Endeavour with DePaul. But anyway, before we jump right into, I guess, the whole story, let's just kind of summarize final thoughts about what I thought about it, and then we'll jump into the spoilery section. Uh, it's it's not really an action book at all. Not a lot of fighting. It's focused on, I mean, basically what the Federation wants to do. Finding that peaceful outcome, and that's one of the things I really liked about this. So, and then plenty of just kind of great Trek stuff thrown in there. Your classic giant space aliens, and a lot of fun little cameos that the author kind of dips in there as well, especially kind of drawing heavily from, of course, Enterprise, but then just adding in other things from other series as well, which made it really fun. You kept having all these little names pop up that you remembered. So, an excellent book. However, I should have kind of done my research because this is kind of the start of this whole series, this Rise of the Federation series, and I have I think the next two or three ready to go. But in reading this, all it makes me want to do is go back and read the Romulan War, because this, in the beginning, kind of references that heavily, and like I said, if I would have kind of done a little bit more research, I probably would have picked a Romulan War book to start with my Enterprise reading, and would have been better for it, because now I am going to pause the Rise of the Federation, and definitely the next time I pick up an Enterprise book, it's going to be I guess whatever would make the most sense. So I'm going to kind of look into that and see, and just pick up wherever the story picks up after the series stops off, and go from there, and then we'll get back to this at some time in the future. So, but if you don't want to hear any more spoilers, I guess you can head out now and live long and prosper, and we'll see you next time. But for everybody else, let's just dive in to what we've got here, which is, again, a very expansive story. There is a lot going on between so many different characters and aboard different ships, different planets, and some stuff is kind of seemingly almost unrelated to everything else that's going on too. So, but the story starts out with, basically, there is a race called the Tandarans, and they're having trouble with their people being kidnapped. So the Endeavor, the USS Endeavor, which is the new flagship of the fleet, and we do have a picture of the Endeavor here. Here. Yes, so here. The USS Endeavor, the new flagship of the fleet, under the command of Captain T'Pol, is, and it's also the flagship of Admiral Archer. So they're out to kind of solve this mystery and see exactly, what is going on here. So they get out there, and they find out that basically that the abductors were the Malurians. So again, a lot of deep dives to the Enterprise. But this was, I'm looking at the memory beta on this book, which is just a fantastic resource. Oh my gosh, whoever wrote that thing outdid themselves. But the Malurians basically could they were masters of disguise. So initially, if you remember, the Malurian was the guy who was poisoning the planet in an episode of Enterprise, and this guy was named Garros. Dalar Garros. So Dalar Garros has kind of come back, and he is trying to instigate trouble, basically. Stir up trouble so that this newly formed Federation, won't have a chance to undermine what they want to do. So they were able to expose, that initially, and then the story kind of continues on, and kind of like a sad part too at this point in the book, it's explained that because of the use of the transporter, the early transporter, too much, that other people, but including Archer and Reed, they're left with this genetic damage, so they can no longer have children. And basically from that point on, they're saying transporters only in case of emergency. So there's a lot of shuttlecraft riding in the book here. So okay, so at this point in the story, they give command of the USS Pioneer, which we have some pictures of here, to Captain Malcolm Reed. So here is the Pioneer, kind of a sleek little ship. We got the bottom view, we got the top view there. But their task in this book is to to figure out how to integrate all the various technologies from all these different races that have joined the Federation into their ships. Initially, that's becoming a problem. So they can't go to warp and have shields active at the same time, and there's other inconsistencies like that as well. So they have assigned Captain Reed, and also Reed has invited Mayweather aboard to be his first officer. So Reed and Mayweather on the Pioneer are kind of tasked with figuring out a way to integrate these systems. So they bring aboard a group of engineers led by none other than Tobin Dex. So again, here's another little kind of fun little cameo that you get to have of former Dax host, and getting to see a little bit of their life here. And they come aboard and are able to start working with the engineers there to integrate the system. So there's some kind of drama between them and that kind of thing, but they eventually all work it out. And again, other stuff going on the Pioneer too, which is pretty interesting, and they kind of give these little cameos. Is there's their security officer whose name is Val Williams, and then there's the ship's historian, and that is none other than Sam Kirk. So just again, funny little like name drops, and I think that they are insinuating that they get together, and then of course James Kirk then. But okay, so on the Pioneer, they're trying to integrate these systems. Something goes wrong, and the ship is thrown into a wormhole, which then throws them into the atmosphere of a gas giant. So that's your kind of, you got this element of danger that you have happening in the book, which is nice. I guess one of the good things about this book is how it has these different ships, each doing this kind of different situation. And so you have the Pioneer, and they're the ones that are in immediate danger, and they have to come up with a way to get themselves out of that. And then you have the Endeavor, and the Endeavor is kind of on the peace mission to, well, basically they've kind of found out that there's these species, and they've referred to them as the mutes because they don't seem to communicate at all verbally. And they've been taking ships, and they've been taking people throughout the sector, and they are trying to find a way to contact them to communicate with them. And they've been working with this other non-Federation species and that kind of thing to get that accomplished, but so far have not been able to do that. So, and then kind of what you have going on is on that end also is, well, so you have what's going on the ships, and then you have also this kind of subterfuge that's going on beneath that even, where the Orions, led by we have Dinesh and Navarre, and these are Orions that appeared in like one of the Enterprise episodes, and then I think another Orion was one that was referenced in an animated series episode, and we'll get to all these kind of names and stuff at the end, and we'll kind of wrap that up a little bit better. But the Orions are kind of the syndicate there is behind it all, and the idea is to drive the Federation towards war, and then by doing that to kind of break them up and cause trouble for them. So that's the background that's going on there, and they are actually influencing some of the the Federation commissioners, and I think one of the admirals, the Tellarite admiral. So they're being directly influenced by the Orions. So you have that going on there, and they're pushing for war. And then you have on the other side, you have like Archer and T'Pol, and they're pushing for peace. You have Admiral Shran in the middle. Gotta love Shran, right? I mean, so I love seeing him come back, and then seeing his kind of input into the story was great. But eventually, they're able to work out a solution, and they're able to capture some of these people at some point. And once they're captured, T'Pol is able to mind meld with them and kind of establish a way to get communication with them. Once she does that, they try to set that up, a way to communicate, and they're going to send Hoshi Sato over there to communicate. Since they have some of the mutes prisoner, the mutes basically send like a whole fleet after them now. And they make... It's at this point in the story they kind of reveal what's actually going on with these aliens, and the aliens see all other forms of life as kind of like how we before would see, like animals or something like that. So they've been taking them and doing like experiments to learn more about them and that kind of thing. So it's up to the crew of the Endeavor, T'Pol and them, to convince the aliens that they are, they're capable of the same kind of life that they are. They're the same level that they are, so that they will, feel empathy and then stop doing what they're doing. So they send Hoshi over there, and then eventually, kind of once that doesn't really work out, and some more trouble within the fleet kind of causes a little bit more trouble with them, T'Pol herself decides to go over, and then through the course of several days is able to kind of work with them and convince them that they are equal people, to them. They're not animals. And then through that, they're able to release all of the people that are taken, And then you still have, the people that are pushing for war because of everything that they've done. But then once it's revealed that, they've been kind of egged on, they've been pushed towards this more aggressive stance, then it kind of goes down a little bit. So that's basically how that situation resolves. There's a whole situation here in the book too, with Trip, and of course Trip is dead in the show, but he is brought back in the books by Section 31. And again, I've not read that yet, but so Trip is back and he's kind of shady working for Section 31. But he talks with Archer and he meets telepathically with T'Pol in a few scenes, and he helps Archer expose the whole Orion Syndicate plot. So that was fun and interesting to kind of have that little part in there, which was really, kind of Archer's biggest part in it. It was mainly, I would say, kind of a T'Pol-focused novel, with, between, T'Pol and the Endeavor and Reed on the Pioneer. They do have another ship in this book and another kind of small story, and that is the USS Essex. And if that sounds familiar, and it did to me as a TNG fan, that was from the episode where Data, O'Brien, and Troy get taken over by the ghost of Captain Bryce Shumar. Of course, it's not really them, but so an interesting callback there too. But I think that the Essex also was used in the Romulan War. So, other stuff I haven't read about. But Commissioner Soval is on the Essex, and they're negotiating with the Saurians to establish mining rights. And they're able to establish mining rights, and this kind of the groups on the planet are fighting against each other, and one is trying to gain the upper hand by getting weapons from the Federation. And they're not going to do that. And at the end of the book, the Orions kind of sneak in, and then they make a agreement with this one Saurian, and this guy's name is Maltuvis. And an interesting thing is he is mentioned briefly by Kirk in a TOS episode. So it's just, again, lots of fun little names and callbacks that happen. But this whole story was kind of thrown in there. It was good. There were some interesting things about it, but maybe it felt like there was a little bit too much going on here at some points. So I think for me, the funnest was the story involving the Pioneer. So when we last left them, they've been thrown into this atmosphere of the gas giant. Mayweather was knocked out when that happened, and he's been kind of the bridge. Reed is, he's not the very most personable captain, so he's been relying on Mayweather, maybe a little bit too much, to be the bridge between him and the crew. And then you've also had this kind of trouble between the engineers that came aboard and the engineers already aboard the ship as well. So there's been this kind of drama there as well. But now they're in deep trouble. So they're falling into the gravity of this planet. All systems are offline, and the radiation from this nearby radiation belt or whatever is slowly killing them. They have to go into the warp nacelle tubes, just like that one episode of Enterprise, and from inside there have to work out a solution, work out their own personal problems, and figure out a way to save the Pioneer so that they can show the Federation how to integrate the systems, because they've figured that out. Tobin Dax has helped figure that out. So they have an interesting little story there where the science officer in his kind of free time has been scanning the planet just to learn more about it, because that's what he likes to do. And he's discovered some kind of giant creatures. So once kind of all is lost,